For centuries, humanity believed the stars were silent. We mapped them, measured their distances, gave them names drawn from gods and myths, but they never spoke back. Space was a stage, vast and unfeeling, and we were the only actors upon it. That illusion shattered when the James Webb Space Telescope fixed its gaze upon an interstellar traveler catalogued as 3I Atlas. At first, astronomers thought they had found nothing more than a wandering rock, the third known object to pass through our solar system from the deep between the stars. The first was Oumuamua, a cigar-shaped mystery that slipped past Earth in 2017. The second, Borisov, more closely resembled a conventional comet. Atlas was supposed to be the next in line, destined to blaze briefly through our skies before vanishing forever into the night. But Atlas was different. Infrared scans revealed something no comet had ever shown before. Shadows with angular precision cut across its surface, like fins or panels jutting against the void. Heat signatures traced lines too sharp, too orderly, too intentional. And trailing behind it was not the diffuse plume of dust and ice that marks a comet's passage, but a corridor of faintly warmed particles, evenly spaced, as though placed there by design. A propulsion trail. Not natural. Not random. Evidence of technology. Scientists argued in whispers, in corridors, in encrypted threads. The word artifact began to appear in notes never meant to be public. Then came the maneuver. Atlas shifted course. Not by accident, not by gravitational slingshot, not by the erratic outgassing jets that nudge icy bodies unpredictably. No, this was something else entirely. Its velocity changed in a controlled, undeniable way. It adjusted its vector. Its new path did not put it on a collision with Earth, but it brought the object closer than any interstellar body had ever dared to pass. Too close for coincidence. It was steering. Behind closed doors, panic bloomed. NASA, ESA, and JAXA convened a hidden symposium under layers of encryption and classified access. Leaked documents later described the atmosphere not as scientific curiosity, but as existential dread. Questions were raised that no one in the room felt prepared to answer. What happens if the public learns we are being watched? Do we reveal the truth and risk panic, or suppress it and risk losing control? Should Atlas be treated as a guest, or as a threat? And if it is a threat, what does defense against something like this even mean? These discussions were still raging when Webb's vision suddenly went dark. The telescope had been meticulously tracking Atlas across multiple observational grids. Then, without warning, one grid went black. Not a hardware fault. Not a software error. Neighboring fields were pristine. Only the section pointed at Atlas collapsed. Just before the feed cut, instruments recorded a sudden flash of light, a spike of infrared energy, like a directed burst. Engineers compared it to a deliberate interference pattern, as if Atlas had reached out and placed a hand across Webb's eyes. In the silence that followed, suspicion turned into something colder. Atlas wasn't just maneuvering. It was aware. Even stranger discoveries followed. Astronomers analyzing its reflective fluctuations broke them down with Fourier transforms, mathematical tools for turning light into waveforms. What emerged was impossible to dismiss: structured fluctuations, too ordered to be natural, too deliberate to be ignored. Atlas was not transmitting in the traditional sense. It was mirroring. Every frequency aimed at it was reflected back, not randomly, but in structured, modified form. As if it were answering. Testing. Learning the language of its observers. And then Webb detected something worse. Trailing Atlas was a second object. Smaller, dimmer, harder to detect, it moved like a shadow bound to its master. At times it vanished entirely from infrared, only to reappear moments later on a slightly altered vector. Scientists called it Echo 9. To some, this was confirmation that Atlas was no lone wanderer, it was part of a formation. A vanguard. The universe, once so quiet, had begun to whisper. More anomalies soon followed. Nearby asteroids that passed close to Atlas experienced orbital shifts, not through gravity, but as if tugged by ripples in space-time itself. Webb registered oscillations in the cosmic microwave background radiation around the object, distortions normally seen only near black holes. Atlas wasn't just moving, it was manipulating. The SETI, the institution that had waited half a century for contact, fell silent. Updates ceased. Social channels went dark. Insiders whispered that its arrays had been redirected under military oversight. The story spread of strange echoes received in Australia, signals that bore the unmistakable signature of responses from Atlas itself. But the conversation cut off abruptly, like a line severed mid-sentence. And then came the rhythm. Orbital data revealed Atlas was slowing, not chaotically, not randomly, but following a precise mathematical sequence. The Fibonacci spiral, the same ratio that defines seashells, galaxies, hurricanes, and DNA. A universal code. Too perfect to dismiss as accident. It was communication, written in the language of nature itself. A message broadcast not in words, but in mathematics. The implications tore across the world like an underground fire. Philosophers claimed Atlas was not an object at all, but a mirror, reflecting back not just our signals, but our questions, our fears, our place in the cosmos. Religious leaders whispered of omens, of watchers, of judgment. Governments quietly drafted emergency protocols. And in the shadows of the internet, amateur astronomers traded footage of unexplained flickers, halos, and moving lights, all pointing toward Atlas. What terrified scholars most was the possibility that this was not the first time. At the South Pole Neutrino Observatory, ice core samples revealed irregularities in cosmic particle influx stretching back centuries. The patterns aligned uncannily with the path Atlas now follows. Ancient myths spoke of wandering stars, fiery gods, omens that arrived, lingered, and vanished. Had Atlas visited before? Had humanity already been tested, long before we had the tools to measure it? Perhaps every age receives its watcher, and ours has simply come again. The James Webb Space Telescope was built to peer into the dawn of time. Instead, it may have forced us to confront the present, that we are not alone, and never were. Atlas does not drift blindly. It follows a map. A plan. Waiting, watching, responding. And now that we have looked at it, truly looked, it has acknowledged us. The most chilling question is not what Atlas is. It is what comes after. Because if Atlas is a sentinel, a scout, a probe, then what built it is still out there. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, something has already set its eyes on Earth. Something vast enough, patient enough, to send a messenger across interstellar gulfs not once, but perhaps many times across history. Something that does not need to shout, because it already knows we are listening. The night sky has always comforted us with its stillness, its distance, its apparent indifference. But that illusion is broken now. The stars are no longer silent. The next time you look up at them, remember, not every light you see is a star. Some are eyes. Watching. Waiting. Calculating. And now, knowing. The universe has spoken. The question is not whether we will answer. The question is whether we are ready for what answers